Byrd and Byrd. Hey, so can we
Woohoo!
just talk about how fun the comedy show was? Are you glad you went?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I didn't even know that he actually went and hosted those in person. I thought he was just a social media guy.
Because you see him on TikTok? Is that where you have seen him, or is
No,
it just from me sharing?
it's like on Facebook is where I've seen him.
I feel like we need to tell people who we're talking about. It's
Yeah,
John
go ahead.
Christ. And for the longest time, I thought it was John Christ, which he's always been like a Christian comedian, but he's funny. He's
He
so
is
funny.
so funny. He is, but did you see that one? Like to me, one of the funniest things where he was talking about where he said, it is so hard to be healthy. He said,
Yeah.
I just went to a yoga class and spent 45 minutes and paid like $100 for the yoga class to try to not fart for 45
Yeah.
minutes. But you could sit on your couch all day for a month and pay $12 for Netflix.
But I think what makes him this was actually my first comedian show. Is that how comedy show?
Oh my God.
You've been to Kevin Hart, but what I loved, so I don't know if this is, typical or not, but he was so animated. Like
Yeah.
he'd get down on the ground and like reenact things. And I think that's important even when, you look at social media and content creation. People don't want scripted, staged, like you fall in love with the story.
Monotone. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's part of those nonverbals, and then for some reason, every time I'm driving with you, it's the funniest thing. I'm trying to be cautious, and you're like, "Is there a reason why all these
Dude,
cars are
you
passing us?"
drive 15 miles per hour under the speed limit.
I
Like,
don't.
literally, every time I drive with you, we're sitting in the car and you are oblivious that the cars to the left and right of us are like passing us. The grandmas are
That
passing
is
us.
the
It
only thing
is
I could think of.
so true.
No. First, I know people usually get scared when they ride with me, like Peyton, our niece, won't even ride in the front seat, but I think too, I'm
I
not
don't
used to
understand.
having someone
I know.
talking to me. 'Cause I'm usually listening to that sounds super lame,
I'm
but
just
I'm
letting
usually
you know that when
listening.
you're talking, I'm concerned because if you're talking to somebody on the phone, you'll get pulled over for going under, but the awareness level is so off that I have to point it out every single time.
And
It's
then you were like,
it's
"Please
concerning.
don't mom us," like, where you, like, push on the gas, let go of the
Yeah.
gas.
I think that you might need another like driver's ed course.
Oh, don't even go there. I'm the one that passed the test the first time, my friend.
It's true. We were
You
self
failed.
Okay, I failed, yes, but dad taught us. So, the question
Hey,
that made me
even
fail the
playing
test?
field, we had the
No,
same instructor.
no. But do you know the question that I missed that caused me to miss it by 1 point was what color is the flag supposed to be if you're toting a car behind you? Is that the word toting? If you have like a chain and you're carrying a car behind you, what color is the flag supposed to be on the chain? And it was like
Orange,
white, orange, or yellow.
orange.
Nope, that's what everybody would guess. It was like white or something. I actually don't remember what the answer is, but I know I picked orange and it wasn't right.
So to be clear, the test told you the very one question
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
caused you there weren't any other questions that could have
Nope.
caused
Just
you.
the
Oh,
just that. I think that was
okay.
just the zinger. That like it. Of course, it's orange, and I picked orange, and orange wasn't right, and so I wanted to challenge it, but
Of
I didn't.
course you did.
Needed to
God.
negotiate why that was a poor question, and it clearly was wrong. Anyways, welcome to the Nerd and Bird Show. There's been some funkiness going on with this market.
Yeah.
Banks and I think when there's so much uncertainty, not even just in the real
Mhm.
estate market, but when there's so much uncertainty, I feel like it causes people to paralyze a little bit. Like whether you're a loan officer, a realtor, a consumer, like whatever it is that you do, it almost paralyzes you a little bit when
Mhm.
there's like there's banks going under. And quite frankly, we haven't heard about banks going under until the housing crash. And so there's a lot of
Yeah.
confusion. A lot of people are thinking we're back into a housing crash because they're seeing that. But of course, it's not a housing crash. There's nothing wrong with actual mortgages. We're not doing shady stuff. There's no stated income loans. It actually, the guidelines are more strict than ever right now. Like actually running the robot underwriter DU for the
Oh,
loan
wow.
officers that are listening, it's harder than
Mm,
it's ever been right now. So
mm.
it's not, these banks aren't going under because of bad mortgage loans and fraud and all that kind of stuff. They're
Guess they
going
weren't
under
like
because of leverage.
it wasn't like big name banks. I mean, like Wells Fargo or Chase, but even like my business bank account is not it's not a big bank. So I kind of freaked out of like, "Oh my gosh, is my money safe in there? Do I need to move it somewhere else?" So that's what makes me really excited about the co-host today,
Yeah.
because this is his specialty. So,
Yeah, we've got, and I'll go into a little bit of detail, and then of course I'll let Jeff Davis, our financial advisor, take over because he's really going to explain from the stock market standpoint. If you have your money right now invested in the market, stocks or bonds, which your retirement accounts are typically invested there, if you have parents that are nearing retirement, this is such an important message for you because it is not the time to be asleep at the wheel. Like
mm,
he'll tell you you need to know what your stuff's invested in. And did you know, Deborah, like between 80 to 85% of people have no idea like what their 401k is even invested in?
um, weird.
Okay, okay. So this is your wake up
I pay
call.
someone else to help manage that, and Jordan is really good with the finances, but I remember reading even a stat of like 74% don't even know what their interest rate is on their home, and I know ours is in the 2s, so but I
Yeah.
don't know the exact rate.
But it's just the thing, like when the market crashed, depending on how old you are, it's like when the market crashed and the stock market's not doing great. And Jeff will tell you that we're expecting more fallout, just like what happened in '08. Like we're just seeing the beginnings of this. And so let me just explain this and then we'll kick it off to Jeff. But when you're a banking institution and people deposit their money at the bank, whether it's a direct deposit or physical cash, the banks are required to keep 10% of that, and then they can lend out 90%. And that's typically where banks make their money is they lend out for mortgages, for business loans, lines of credit, and they lend that money out and they charge you interest, and that's the money that they make. But what had happened over the last few years is like this Silicon Valley Bank, their clientele, they didn't need loans. So instead of lending out money, they invested the money and they bought treasuries and mortgage bonds. And what happened was last year with the federal funds rate increasing so much, they were over leveraged. And basically, the bonds that they bought were worth, let's just say, just to keep it simple, the bonds that they bought for $5. And that was the value at that point in time was $5 a bond. But as the federal funds were increasing it, the value of those bonds were slipping to $5 to $4 to $3. And so now they're sitting with a bunch of bonds that are only worth today $2, but they bought them for 5. And so they intended to wait until the market corrected, but it became known, and then there was a what you call a bank run where once this news comes out like, oh gosh, they're going to file bankruptcy, people get nervous and they rush to the bank and they're like, I want my money, I want my cash, I want my money, I want to move it, transfer my money to Wells Fargo. And so you call those bank runs. And so the only way for them to be able to give them their money back, because they only kept 10% on reserve, is they had to sell those bonds. And so they were selling them for a massive loss because they bought them for $5, selling them for 2. You're taking a massive loss, and that loss eventually made them go belly up. So the moral of the story was they were over leveraged, and then you have all these bank runs, and it's going to continue to likely happen, which is why if you've got money invested in the market, if you've got a 401k, if your parents do, the value of your assets might go down another, X amount, and it might take you 4 or 5 years to recover to where you are now. So what do you do with the money? Are you investing in real estate? Do you invest in bonds? What does Jeff say about the actual health of the real estate market? All of those things he's gonna answer for us. But did you have anything to say before I bring them in?
Just kidding. Sometimes when it's all money and bond and, I like it, but sometimes it's like you're talking and I'm just this is why you have experts, and I do think it's important that you know as much as you can, but, you can only be so knowledgeable, which is why I think you need financial advisors or mortgage professionals like you and Jeff on your team because, for the common folk, your mouth, I started laughing because I'm like, what if I just
Okay. That's the purpose of this is you're snoring and you can't be asleep at the wheel. So let's go ahead without further ado. Let's start the interview with Jeff Davis, a local financial advisor. He's going to tell us what to do with our money. Is our money safe in the bank? Would you buy real estate right now? Jeff Davis.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Jeff Davis. Many of you guys know Jeff. He is my financial advisor. You're the lucky guy that gets to manage all of my money and deal with all my craziness. Not really. But I really wanted to bring you in today. I have a lot of respect for your opinions, your thoughts, your advice. You've been through some markets, and a lot of my clients are nervous with the recent news about the banks. And so before we get into the bank stuff, will you just introduce yourself a little bit, where you work? And your son just told me that you're the most recognized financial advisor. So I know you're not going to brag about yourself.
No, I'm not. Jeff Davis. I work at Ameriprise. We have a team at Ameriprise. So, and we basically do kind of a holistic approach, everything from financial planning all the way up to managing the assets, right? So I've been in the business 30 years and I've got a whole team of people that work with us. So, it's great. I love it.
You've been around some markets.
I've been through some very dicey markets. Okay. So,
well, then what are your thoughts about this recent, all these banks? And first off, why is it happening? And then what would you advise to people that may be panicking right now?
This is why it's happening. So in 08, 09, things melted down pretty bad, right? Fed lowers the rates basically down to zero, keeps that rate down at zero till 2021, right? So what happens is these banks buy treasuries, okay? And so the longer you go out on the yield curve for treasury, so what I mean by that is you can buy a one-day piece of paper all the way out to 30 years. So if rates are at 0%, you try to buy the longer paper to get a little better yield, right? Okay. So what happened is interest rates started going up faster than any other time in history, right? The Fed's trying to fight inflation, right? And so the banks were on the wrong side of the trade, right? They didn't, their treasuries were going down. As rates go up, the value of bonds go down, right? And so what happens is they were on the wrong side of the trade constantly. And so that causes the meltdown. And then you have a bank run, right? Everybody's taking money out.
Yeah.
As your investments are going down, right? On what you're guaranteeing the money with, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just kind of and unfortunately, there'll probably be more banks that go under, right? I mean, you just saw this morning, Credit Suisse had to get an injection from the Swiss Fed, basically, to stay afloat, right? Wow. So you've got a lot of banks that are leveraged, right? So in 08, think about this. Think about this. 08, there was 50 trillion of these bad loans on the books at the banks, right? Today, there's 550 trillion. Okay, so think about that. Okay, you're going to have some fallout probably.
So as a consumer, are we back to the 08 crash? Like, what are your?
I don't think, as far as the stock market's concerned, I don't think you're going to have the flash crash like you did in 08. I think it's going to be kind of a gradual down, right? Okay. You've got a lot of companies out there that are still way inflated in price, but they're not making any money, right? So you need some of the market to sell off, right? And so I honestly think you'll get another leg down in the market. Okay. But if you're diversified properly, like you are, then you're not losing any money. Yeah. So there's a difference.
Thank you for not.
There's a difference.
Thank you for doing what you. Not losing money.
Yeah, that's important because that way you don't have to make 40% back.
It's hard
to get back to even, right?
Right.
Think about the people in 08, 09. A lot of those people in their 401ks took 5 years just to get back to even. Okay, right. Because they lost so much money. So. If technology's not working, right, we don't want to sit with it and write it down, right? Yeah. So as far as people having their money at the bank, I typically don't keep a lot of money at the bank because the
You
bank
mean
doesn't-
like the bank, like Chase Banks, the Bank of America,
the
your
bank.
cash
They don't,
money
they
bank.
don't pay a lot of money on the cash, right?
Right.
And then at the end of the year, I get a 1099 to pay taxes on the little bit of interest that I did make, right?
Right.
So I don't keep a lot of money at the bank per se, but if you have $250,000 at the bank, right, it's FDIC insured, right? You're fine.
Yeah.
You don't have anything to worry about.
So if you've got $200,000 at one of the big banks, let's just say Wells Fargo, and Wells Fargo goes under, which would never happen, but if Wells Fargo
it's
goes
FDIC
under,
insured.
you're-
They'll step in and the doors will shut on a Sunday and FDIC will open it back up on a Monday.
Got it.
So you're covered there.
Okay.
Can
I dumb this down just a little bit and you
Sure.
tell me if this is right or not? So from a consumer standpoint, dumbing it down in the sense of they were to relate it to their way of living, are you saying that the banks, consumers, they put their money in the banks, then the bank takes that money, they keep 10% on reserve, and then they can take that money and either loan it out or they can buy treasuries.
Right.
So that's what they did over the last few years is they took the money and they bought these bonds or these treasuries.
The last 20 years, right?
Right.
The Fed has had rates down so low, right? That the bank was it's kind of like this. When COVID happened, everybody got the money from the government.
Yeah.
What was it? PPE?
PEPE.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Forbearances, the
Okay.
PPEs.
Yeah. So what happened, like this SVB bank, right?
Right.
They didn't shore up their balance sheet with that money. They made more leveraged loans on that money.
Yeah. So they took the money. So I was trying to tell a client this the other day. It's kind of like when COVID hit and toilet paper like one
Right.
roll of toilet paper, the grocery store could sell for $5 because everybody was so desperate for that. But then the year passes by and the price comes down, and now you're stuck with a warehouse of $5 that you paid $5 a roll for. That now it's the current market value is $1. So what do? You sell it, but if you sell them, you're selling them for a massive loss. And that is that how you would?
But when everybody's coming in and they want their money, like
Yeah.
look at the bank out in California, right? Everybody's doing a mass run on that bank. Hey, I want my money.
Yeah.
What do you have to do? You have to sell those treasuries at a loss to give those people back their money, right? So it's just kind of it just feeds on itself, right?
So is that what? So everybody wanted their money, so then they had to sell these rolls of toilet paper, and that's a
Right,
big loss,
right,
and then you go
right.
under.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you
So
think more banks are going to follow suit?
I sent you a list of the 20 banks that are in trouble.
So if you have money in that bank, and one of these 20,
Really, it's more the top 5.
okay,
But I mean, if you have money at Bank of America or one of the big banks, I don't think there's any issues. Do they have some bad stuff on the books? Of course they do, but not to the effect that they're going to go under. Okay, the government's not going to let the banking system go under. If that ever happened, and you lost credibility with the U.S. public, right, the people.
Yeah.
You've lost it all, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going to let that happen. They're not that stupid, so to speak.
yeah.
Right.
So would you say that the real estate market, because this is the stock market, I think a lot of times when people hear they've got bad things on their P&L, let's say, or these bonds are bad, it's not that the mortgage loans are back to the stated income and lenders are writing bad loans. It just means that they were getting a 1.5 yield versus a 5% yield, and now they're upside down. Or would you say these are bad? Like when you say bad, what do you mean by that?
You mean on the bad loans at the bank?
Yeah.
Well, like the bank in California, right?
Yeah.
They're a startup technology and solar business was their big, okay? And so you've got a lot of technology companies out there that are not making a dime, but their stock price was 200.
Gotcha.
Okay? And so when you're investing in those type of companies and bad times hit, a lot of those companies go under. They don't have the cash to sustain the downside, right?
Yeah.
And so SVB was holding that paper, right? And so that's what you're asking me, right?
Yeah, because in our real estate world or in the mortgage world, people are so nervous about the real estate market, especially us being here in Frisco and the DFW area, that people are associating this news with the banks going under to when banks were writing bad loans and disguising it.
You don't that same scenario that in 08, 09, it was a housing crisis, right? we're not in a housing crisis right now.
I think that's
okay?
what people need to
We're
hear.
not in a housing crisis at all, okay? And I tell people all the time, hey, if you really see a house that you really like, go get it. Yes, rates are higher, and we'll refinance, right? 18 months later. I just saw an article on Bloomberg yesterday, and it was talking about that with where we are with the economy and the Fed and everything else, that probably by June or July, maybe August, the Fed starts cutting rates again because the economy's slipping into a recession, and they're trying to stave off that, right? So that being the case, rates are going to continue to come down after that, right? So once they get inflation in check, rates will come back down because you have to lower the rate to stimulate the economy. So,
So you're not worried about, because I think that's the narrative that some of at least my clients tell themselves from a real estate standpoint is, the last 2 years, home prices skyrocketed. We've never really seen that in Texas. Like we saw it in California years ago, but it's almost like they're forming their own conclusion that home prices skyrocketed like crazy the last few years. And then now interest rates are high, inflation's high. And now we're hearing the news about these banks like, oh, it's another housing crash.
Yeah, but okay, so take your account at the bank, for example, right? You make your payments on time, your A1 credit, you've not missed any payments at all, right? They're going to keep your loan. Even if that bank went under, okay, they're going to sell your loan to another lender because lenders, they're standing in line waiting to take people with good credit, right? And they have solid backing on their house. So it's not the same market it was in 08, 09, okay? If you look at the real estate market today in Dallas, you still have, 1.6 million of homes that need to be built so the demand is there, right?
Yeah.
What slowed it down is rates went up so dramatically, somebody that could get a house for $1,500 is now paying $2,800.
Right.
And so it changed the landscape, right?
Right.
So, but my point is, you're still going to have that demand for that house because the supply is so low. So that's why I say if you find a house that you really love, go ahead and get it.
Yeah,
right?
because
you're not going to be paying high interest for very long.
Right.
Right.
And do you think the price of homes are going to go down?
No.
Yeah. I read that at least here in DFW, I'm not saying it's like this everywhere in the country, but in DFW, every 6.5 minutes, there's somebody relocating here. For the job market.
But think about this. The Dallas market typically doesn't gap up like Vegas or some of these other hot areas, right? So typically Dallas market goes up 2.5%, 3%, right? It doesn't do crazy swings. So, when you have a shortage of housing and everybody's still moving to Dallas, Fort Worth and to Texas, right? Prices are not going to go down.
Yeah.
Right. So the demand's too high.
There's over 66% of people in America, not Texas, but in America, have an interest rate below 4%. And so what's contributing to the lack of inventory is, yes, builders have slowed down, but now these first-time home buyers who are a little bit smarter than the boomers were, or they're like, maybe I can take my house that I bought that's on a 3% rate and maybe I'll keep it instead of selling it, and they're turning it into rentals. And there's a piece of that that's contributing to the inventory shortages. There's not enough homes. The millennials and Gen Zs are 20 million more population than the people before them. And people are starting to get empowered to, well, maybe I can try this whole rental thing and turn my house into a rental versus selling it.
Well, and look, everybody wants to have Airbnbs, right?
Yeah.
That's a hot topic
It
right
is
now,
hot.
right?
Yeah.
And so everybody's like, well, I'll just turn my home into Airbnb, right? So
until the HOA catches you.
That's right.
I've gotten slapped before, so.
That's right. So, I don't know who the guy is on TV, but he's like, I've got 20 houses and blah, blah, blah. I'm making all this kind of money. But in reality, probably when you look, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't know if he's on a interest-only loan and now rates have gapped up from 0 to 5.
Right.
Now he's really not making any money, right?
Yeah.
So, but for the normal person that wants to buy a house, I think you go ahead and buy the house. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't be. I don't think you would get a difference on the price that much. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, even last year, the home appreciation in DFW was 9.5% as rates were climbing to what they
What's that tell you?
I know.
Right? There's
Yeah.
a supply glut.
Yeah.
Right? Supply and demand.
Yeah. So let's go back to the market, your market, stock market, investing, 401ks, retirement. What would you advise people today who have their money invested in the market and they're scared? Do they pull it out? Do they keep it in? What do they do?
Probably call me.
Yeah.
They need to sit down and if they have a financial plan, they need to go back and pull that financial plan out and say, look, I'm not retiring for another 20, 25 years. Is this really the way my asset allocation should be, right? So you have to determine how much risk do you really want to take. Right now, you're not taking a lot of risk per se, personally,
Yeah.
right? And so because it's not time for that. Right now, it's time to have the defense on the field, right? Not the offense. So you need to look at your asset allocation inside that plan or that account, and it needs to be changed accordingly, right? If tech's
Right.
not working, we don't need to be in tech, right? We need to be over here, right? So I think it's super important to go back and look at your goals on, hey, I'm not retiring for another 20 years, right? So I'm good, right?
Yeah.
But I can make a few little changes here that will help offset the downside.
Yeah.
Right?
I like that analogy because it's like it is time for the defense, and it's like, we're in March Madness right now. So
That's right.
We're going to talk about your shirt in just a second because I don't know if you're like sporting Tennessee or not, but
Yeah.
we'll go there. But I think you have to visit with your coach, which I would say is your financial advisor. They're your money coach, and just reassess. It's halftime, in your life or in this market. Is the game plan still the game plan that you should be utilizing in the second half of the game?
That's true. And also you need to ask yourself, hey, if the market goes down another 20%, can you stomach that?
Yeah.
Can you handle that? Right? A lot of people, they love to buy at the top and sell at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? It's human nature, right?
Right.
So if the market did correct another 15 or 20%, would you panic and sell at the bottom? That's what you need to ask yourself. Are you able to stay in with that asset allocation? So most of the time when I look at it or our team looks at it, there's something that needs to be changed on the asset allocation, right? So
if you're listening to this right now, you need to call Jeff, have him review your statements, and just make sure that, because what I find when I talk to clients, they don't even know, like if they've got a 401k or a 403b, they don't even know where their money's invested. Because
they don't have most
the
of them
statements
don't have
are confusing. I will say
They are confusing.
They are confusing. And so I think sometimes we feel dumb talking to fancy financial advisors, like, is my money invested in peanut butter and jelly? Like what? I don't know. It's tough to read. So I would encourage people who are listening to not be afraid to ask the questions to the really smart financial advisors.
I met a lady on the plane a couple of days ago, super successful attorney up in New York, lives here in Dallas, works in New York, right? Two weeks out of the month or whatever. Really super, super successful lady, right? And so we started talking about her 401k because she asked what I did, right? And I said, well, tell me what it's in. And she goes, I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And I said, what?
Yeah.
And she goes, I don't have a clue what it's in.
Yeah.
So having that asleep at the wheel mentality is not
good.
Smart right this
Yeah.
second, okay? Because it's not a buy and hold market, right?
Yeah.
The market's not going straight up like it has for the last 10 years. So we need to make some fine-tuning adjustments to protect ourselves, right?
Yep.
So that's the most important thing.
Okay, we can't end this call without addressing it. What's with the shirt? It's loud and proud. Are you sporting Tennessee?
No, this is Winners Travel.
Winners Travel.
It's a charity out of South Carolina that Dr. Clay Louder put together. Okay, and so what we do is we bring in special needs parents, that have a special needs child. Those people, think about it. They live their life for that child, right? Their personal life changes, their business career changes, and then their biggest fear is who's going to take care of my child when I pass, right? And so they get really beaten down. So what we do is with the donation money that comes in, we take those people to an island for a week. And we kind of do a refresher course with them spiritually, physically, and mentally, and kind of get them refreshed, get them charged up again, right?
Yeah.
It's a really cool charity. You can get on YouTube, Google up Winter's Travel. It
Okay.
will pull up the island that we rent, right?
That's
to
so
take
cool.
these people
I didn't know
down.
you did that.
Oh yeah, it's a really cool deal. And we've had some disabled vets come down, disabled Navy SEAls. You know,
Wow.
because I mean they're just so beaten down,
Yeah.
right? And so, but
How
it's
long do they normally stay on the island?
a week.
A week. Okay.
A week. So they'll come in, right, for a week, and then we'll send them home, and then another group will come in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
okay. So, but it's all with donations that come into the charity, and we just use those donations to bring those people down. And
That's really cool.
and it's not a money thing, right? You can be living on Social Security, or you can have 20 million. So we don't delegate it that way. We delegate it on, you know, the person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they just, like I said, they get so beat down.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a
in
lot.
life,
You're-
in life.
yeah. And do you ever just stop to rest and recharge? And that's really,
Yeah,
neat.
it's a really cool deal. It's a really cool deal. So
I love that. Well, thank you. If you guys are listening to this, make sure I will put Jeff's information up here. He's a local guy. I tell people I used to have my investment licenses, so I'm pretty picky when I hire somebody. But now I have the complete trust and faith into Jeff, and you haven't lost me any money. Now I say that, and I'm going to lose money. You watch.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just kidding, but don't be asleep at the wheel. This is not the market to not be paying attention, and you can no longer just say, "Oh, I don't know where it's invested." You need to find out. Yeah, you can't. You really can't afford to do that. No matter how old you are, you can't afford to do that. So, next step: get in contact with Jeff. Review those statements, print them out, and you don't have to feel intimidated. That's the number one thing that I hear is people are so intimidated to meet with a financial advisor. Do I make enough money? What if I don't save enough money? There's just so much fear. But Jeff is super down to earth, and you really do just keep it real. Thank you.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.